All right, guys. So I'm so happy to have you back here with us. Yesterday, we were talking about characters and our relation to them. We were making connections, right? That's what we're working on this week is connections. And yesterday, we talked about how I am similar to the character because, and then you fill in the blanks on what it is that you're similar to. Remember, when we're making connections, it's not always about making an exact connection, right? I am not now, nor will I ever be, a 12-year-old Black boy living in Harlem. That's not my experience, but I can make connections in life to things that somebody else experiences, even though we are totally different people, right? And that applies on anything when you're making connections. When you're making connections from books to life, when you're making connections from your stories, those are things that we can do. It doesn't have to be exact, right? You don't have to fill that mold. We can all make connections to something. So yesterday we were doing the text to self, and today we are going to do a connection as well. And it's as I read, I am reminded of the time that I, So you're making another connection again to something that is happening in the book and something that happened to you personally. Okay. Elena was talking earlier about spending $200 on a Lego set, right? She might find a lot of connections in this book to Lolly, who loves Legos. Like, that's his jam, right? And so that might be something that to her, she's having a connection to. All right, let's get started. We're on chapter 3. Now, he had a friend, Steve, that came over. Steve was best friends with his brother, Jermaine. We still don't know where Jermaine is or what he's been doing. We do know he is gone. We do also know that Lolly has hopes that Jermaine is going to come back and that he's just somewhere hiding, right? Like, he thinks that, like, he and Tupac, because there's this whole theory that Tupac Shakur was not killed and that he's actually just out and hiding and living his best life out of the public eye. So that is where he was drawing in that connection. He was saying, like, I hope that's what my brother's doing. So we don't know. We don't know. We all made different predictions. I made a prediction that somebody important in his life was either dead or in jail, just based on the way he was talking about it. But we don't know. But we do know that the person that's important in his life that is missing is his older brother. His older brother is best friends with Steve, and Steve is 20. And Lolly is 12. So we know that there's an 8-year difference in their ages. We also know that Lolly has a best friend who is from the Dominican Republic, which reminded me a lot of Harbor Me because that's where Esteban was from. So I instantly made that connection. I also know that in New York, you do have a lot of families that have immigrated to New York City from the Dominican Republic, from Cuba, because it's very close to New York. Okay, just like we have on the West Coast, a lot of people that are immigrants from Central America or South America, because it's closer to our coastline, and it's easier to get there. And so he has a friend who goes by the name, he has a nickname, Vega, and his real name isn't Vega though, and he hates it when people call him that. And it was, what was it? What's his actual name? Oh, Casimiro. His full name is Casimiro Vega, and that is Lolly's best friend. We also know that Lolly's not his actual name either. So just in chapter 3, and we're learning a lot. Here we go. Chapter 3. I wanted everybody to go home. And remember, we're making a connection to this book from our lives. Steve had left a while ago, but now Ma's friend, Mr. Jonathan, and his family had come over to celebrate the holiday. I just wasn't feeling them. That all the pasteles you want, sugar? Ma asked me. Shovel some more of my mac and cheese on your plate, Lowell, Yvonne added in. That's lush. 3 cheeses? Put some hair on that frail little chest of yours, Yvonne snickered. Ma said, I don't know where Sugar got that little chest from. His father's chest is broad, which is like super wide. Yvonne went on laughing. Ma's face was blank. I ignored them and continued stuffing 3 plates with food for the other kids. I heard Mr. Jonathan call out from the living room. Will you 2 lesbians stop harassing my friend Wallace? He is a 12-year-old boy with a 12-year-old boy's chest, not like you 2 balloon bosom weather girls. Yvonne burst out laughing again. Our apartment hadn't heard lots of laughter over the past 2 months. Hearing it now reminded me of how things used to be when Germaine was still here. Okay, there's a clue. There hasn't been a lot of laughter in their house over the past 2 months. That makes me think that Germaine has only been gone for about 2 months. I watched Ma search through cans of soda in the fridge. She had a dejected look on her face. Dejected is like not excited. She like upset kind of. A dejected look on her smooth, coffee-colored face. My mother was a pretty normal mom, but different at the same time. The thing that was the most normal about her was that she loved reading mysteries. Something different was that she collected Pez candies. Not like the actual candy, but more like the little dispensers that come with the candy. Ma had a huge collection of these Pez containers in our apartment. She had built special shelves and cabinets to hold them all. I guess she owned over 300 of them things. I think Ma expected me to take over her collection eventually, but I'm not interested. Ma worked as a security guard in downtown Brooklyn. I think she got the job because she was so intimidating. Not that tall, but just really big. Both her and Yvonne were built like New York Giants linemen. But they both were harmless. They usually preferred a joke before they would tackle anybody. I want you to put that image in your head. These women are short and stout. They're like big mamas. Don't make me march in there and defend my Wallace, I heard Mr. Jonathan shout out again. Shut up, Jonathan, Yvonne shouted back. Does this kind of remind anybody of their homes? Like, just with like chaos and yelling and like, does my house. Even though Mr. Jonathan was a man, he really acted more like an auntie to me. He was a friend of Ma's who had known her since the old days, back when she was still with my father. In fact, I knew that my daddy blamed Mr. Jonathan for making my mother gay. Dat limp-wrist friend of your mom's still hanging about? Daddy would ask me whenever I saw him. When I would say yes, then Daddy would go on and on and on and on about how that Mr. Jonathan had been jealous of him and Ma's joy and had convinced her that she liked women when she really didn't. I hope we all know it doesn't work that way. I wasn't even sure how that worked. Could you really make somebody gay just by chatting with them? No. I hoped that I wouldn't turn out that way because I talked to a lot of gays. I actually do like them, but they got too much drama to deal with. So many people hate them and call them names, but I don't think it's something anybody would really pick to be if they had a choice in it. Who would choose to be gay when they knew it was much easier to be straight? I studied the 3 dishes in my arm and started to leave our kitchen when Ma slid a can of fruit punch soda under my left arm. She suddenly hugged me really tight. I thought I was going to drop everything. Give that soda to Jonathan, Ma said. My cherry cobbler's almost done. I don't feel like nothing, I said. I know, she said, unhappy. Yvonne teased. Lolly got all that grub in his hands and he ain't hungry? Ma said to me, But at least you got to test my cobbler for me, honey. My blood sugar's probably sky high already. I nodded. I had only grabbed this food to make them think I was really starved. I hadn't want Ma and Yvonne to nag me again, but not eating so much lately. My mother peeked into the oven with a firm, miserable aspect on her face. It was the first Christmas after Germain. I wondered if every Christmas from now on would feel this sorry. I hurried out of the kitchen and passed into our living room, balancing the plates. Mr. Jonathan relaxed in a chair there, gazing at our little Christmas trees with its twinkly lights. He was an older dude with black and gray hair on top of his head, mixed together. His eyes always sparkled, like he had glitter in them. Mr. Jonathan pulled the can of soda from under my arm. "Don't let them get to you, Wallace," Mr. Jonathan said. "You are entirely normal for your age." I shrugged. "You okay?" he asked. "You've been so down lately. You and your mother, slinking around here just as despondent." I squinted at him. "Despondent," he said again. "Sad." "Oh, okay." Mr. Jonathan shook his gray head. He missed Germain, too. "You tell Marca and Darius not to make a mess back there with all that food." Okay, we are going to pause there. We're not finished with the chapter, but this chapter is a little bit longer. Okay. Lots of stuff to unpack here, guys. Number one, we knew that Lolly was not his actual name. Can anybody tell me what is his name? We learned it. Can anybody in the chat box tell me? Or you can tell me, yeah, Mila, if you're saying me.
Wallace.
That's right. His name is Wallace. Who calls him Wallace? Can anybody else fill in? Somebody kept calling him Wallace over and over, Miles.
His dad?
It's not his dad, but you're close. Somebody in the book kept calling him, there we go, Mela. Yeah, Mr. Jonathan kept calling him Wallace. Mr. Jonathan is the only person so far that has actually referred to him as Wallace. And what do we know about Mr. Jonathan? He's a new character. Hi, Maria. Okay. Mila says he's an old man. Why do you think he's an old man? Because he had some white hair, right? Yeah, I'm not sure how old anybody is. I know that Mr. Jonathan was also friends with his mom from back in the day, right? So he probably went to school with mom, maybe. He was friends with mom back when mom was still with Lolly's dad. Okay, so that was something else. All right. The other thing that came up in there, right? They talked a lot about being gay. Yeah, the dad thought he made the mom gay. Let's unpack that for a second. Some people think that you can just choose to be gay or that somebody can turn you gay. Is this true? Mila's wagging her finger.
Not.
Mila's saying no, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not like being gay is not you can choose, totally, it's your choice, but it's not like a illness that you contract. It's not a disease that like if I am next to my gay uncle, I'm suddenly going to be gay. Okay? It's not like that. You can make a choice in your life if that's how you want, if that's what your preference is. But just by hanging out with people that are gay, you don't become gay. But it is a stereotype, and it's often something people feel when they are intimidated. Or, like, if you can imagine, like, if you can just imagine for a second what it would be like if you absolutely loved somebody and you gave them your whole life, and then all of a sudden they discover something new about themselves and recognize that you're not the person for them. That's probably pretty hurtful. And so I can understand why the dad might have these resentments, but it doesn't mean that anything wrong has ever happened, okay? Especially on the mom side. Like, yeah. And Winnie, I love that you are feeling confident in who you are today. And, you know, that for now is kind of like a yet, right? You guys have the power to be anything you want to be, and own it and love it. I did just want to unpack that for a second, because I don't want us to think going into this that, like, it's not, first of all, it's not a disease at all. And second, you don't just like contract it. Like, you don't, like, just hanging out with somebody doesn't turn you gay. Okay. So you don't have to worry about that. Samra, some people think it's a choice. Some people think you're born that way, and it's just the way you are. And whether you decide to acknowledge it or not is different. That's your choice. That is your choice. He also said that he didn't understand why. He also said that he didn't understand why somebody would make that choice, because it seemed like it was harder to live life as if you were gay than it would be if you were straight. And so I think we need to just make sure that we understand that life is hard any way you choose. Okay. Sometimes you run up against people that don't believe in the way you live your life, but that's their problem, not your problem. You live your life the way you want to. Okay. I totally digressed, because that's not what we're talking about at all. But this book, you guys, hold on before I share that. This book is kind of heavy. Okay. There's a lot of issues that you guys are just tipping into right now. These are some grown-up stuff that are happening in here. And so I just want you to recognize that, and we're going to pause sometimes and actually talk about them, because these are kind of grown-up issues that it's talking about. All right. Like I said, 6th graders that I know, they're reading this story. Okay. So it's kind of a little bit above it, but if we stop and have discussions and actually talk about things as a group, and everybody participates in these conversations, then it's okay that we're reading it. Okay. But that does mean that we're going to be stopping and pausing and reflecting on what we're learning. Okay. Speaking of reflecting on what we are learning, let's take a look at what our reader's response was that we talked about at the beginning. So we needed to figure out, are you reminded of that time? Is there a time in your life that as you were reading this book, you were reminded of? Is there a time in this book that as you were reading this, you were reminded of? So I want to open this up as a chat for just a moment. In the chat box, if you were reminded of anything from your life, go ahead and write it in there. I'm going to give you guys a minute to do that. And then we'll discuss it. Okay? Oops. Well, that went weird. is that Minecraft that we're hearing. And so Sebastian thought that somebody was on Minecraft earlier. Please remember, it is not the time to be playing your games. You have plenty of time to be playing games on your
I'm playing
own.
the school Minecraft that the school gave to us.
It's not appropriate time right now to do that. You should be focusing on what we're doing together as a class.
I am.
So I have to be honest that flaunting it, right, which is what you're doing by purposely going off mute and coming on, is really hurtful to me because it's letting me know that this is not important to you and that you would rather do something else during this time. So if that is what
I actually left my my thing on. That's it. I didn't do anything.
Okay. I'm just saying that by purposely not going on mute and showing the rest of the class that you are playing Minecraft right now, whether or not it's a educational Minecraft or a school Minecraft, is not important to this conversation. The fact that you think that it's okay to do that hurts my feelings, and I feel a little disrespected by that. That's all I'm sharing. Okay, we're going to move on though, because what's important is I want to see, can you make a connection? Can you make a connection to this story? Are you reminded? Are you reminded of anything in your life when listening to this story of Christmas Eve with his family? Thank you, Kayana, for responding. Does anybody else feel like they want to respond to this question?
I mean, I feel like the people who haven't responded are probably basically saying no.
Thank you for sharing what you think about. Okay. As I read, I am reminded of a time. So I'm going to type that in. Remember, when we respond with whole sentences. We restate the question. Okay. So as I read, I am reminded of the time that my family spends on Christmas Eve when we eat dinner, and I always had an auntie that would make a comment about my weight and the food on
Your
my
voice is going like
plate. I also always had an auntie that would tell the other auntie to leave me alone. Okay? That is a connection that I am making to this story. He had somebody, they were talking about his weight, that he was skinny, and his little 12-year-old chest hairs. Okay? Even though I was never had anybody talk to me about my chest hair, I can make a connection to somebody that does not live in my home making comments about my weight and my food on my plate. So it's not the exact same thing, but it is a connection because it's something that I thought about. Okay? That's what making a connection is all about.